Let's take this out. So, um, for those who don't know me, well, my name is on the screen. Um, I write about, I teach, and I try as much as possible to practice a concept I call whole living. And it was born out of 25 years of clinical practice in naturopathic medicine and being an ordained minister and working with many, many people over the years from all walks of life. The concept of whole living was born. And as a result of my own personal journey and my own personal experience, it has brought me to a place in my life where at the age of 64, I can say that I'm living my best years yet. And I do expect that the years ahead will be even greater years, much better years because of it. So everything that I do in terms of working with people, it all falls in within the context of whole living. Um, I still, although I'm retired from clinical practice, I still work almost every day with people in one respect or the other in terms of human well-being, because my passion is helping people to elevate and improve their lives in whatever area that may be. And in so doing, it always falls under within the context of health and wellness. And so this evening, what we're going to be talking about is our whole life, but with a focus on physical wellness. And the reason for that is whatever we may be with in our lives, whatever may be your personal priority right now, it may be, if it is an illness that you want to overcome or an illness that you may want to prevent, you're going to find the solution in what we're going to be talking about tonight. If it is that your personal priority at this point in your life is um, financial security or placing yourself in a better financial position down the road, you'll find solutions for that as well. If it is that relationships are your issues, be it in your home, with your spouse, your kids, on the job, social interactions, if you're dealing and you want to improve your relationship issues, that also, every area of our life is going to be covered in the basic concept and principles that we're going to talk about. So whatever area of our lives you may want to improve, you're going to find it right within here. And so looking at health in a new context, I do believe, and you will get to see that it is the foundation of a truly fulfilling life. How we can live free from stress, which is the number one driver of chronic diseases today, and to look at self-care and the future of maintaining optimal wellness. Um, and I'm going to be talking about a discovery that has been made, a discovery that ushers in a brand new era of wellness that has never existed before. A discovery that is going to be taking the world into a completely new paradigm of approaching health and wellness. I'll talk about that. And then it all fits in within the framework of alignment, which is the secret to thriving and not just surviving. And that is in every area of our life. And so let me just read the quote that you see on the screen, that personal wholeness is a complete state of being expressing a personality shaped by a character refined by truth and molded in love. And that is, if we strive towards this, we will experience a level of living that is unimaginable. That we are all whole beings. We're not fragmented, although our living oftentimes reflect that. And when we come to recognize that and we work towards that, it is amazing what life will become. This evening, we're going to be focusing it, looking at it from the angle of your identity, the source of limitless potential. And that limitless potential is in regardless of what area of our lives we want to improve, be it physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, financially, whatever area, the potential to improve, to enhance, to expand, to elevate, and live truly fulfilling lives, um, it's tied to our identity. And so let us begin by looking at the World Health Organization definition of what health is, and I made a slight adjustment to it. It says health is a state of complete physical, mental, spiritual, and social well being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. I inserted spiritual there because they did not have it, and therefore it does not make it complete. But the thing that I want to bring to our mind and to hold throughout the entire presentation is that health is a state. It is a state that is complete, and it's not the absence of disease or infirmity, which is generally how we perceive health, is that if we don't feel sick, we generally tend to think that we're healthy, and that's not necessarily the case. What I want us to really begin to open our minds and broaden our understanding and perception that health is a state of being, and that state of being encompasses every aspect of our lives, all the physical components, the mental, emotional, the spiritual, and the social components of our life, they all merge together to create this state we call health. This is important because if we don't understand that health encompasses every aspect of our life, and we just continue to think about it as that it relates to how our body feels and how our body functions, then we are likely to end up like the way most of the world ends up with chronic lifestyle diseases. And so for life to truly flourish, we need to cultivate what health is. And so improving our health is the most significant investment we can ever make because every area of our life stands on it. So as we go about chasing life, as they say, trying to improve our quality of life and our standard of living. And we may do that in a fragmented sense in that if physically something is wrong, we go one place to deal with that. If mentally and emotionally it's wrong, we may seek another professional for that. If it's spiritually out of balance, we may seek another. And if it's socially, and so we tend to fragment the way we live. But our state of being, which is which defines how we are based on who we are, that state of being, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, which defines that, that entirely determines how we are going to interact with the social framework of life. And by virtue of that, whether we will live prosperous, abundant, or financially empowered lives or not. That is for another discussion. However, what I want us to be aware of is that these are not separate areas of life. They're all branches of one tree. And if we want to be fruitful in every area, then we have to work at the very root of it so that all branches can be fruitful. So to be physically strong and mentally, to have mental clarity, emotional stability, and to be spiritually aligned, which is what defines our state of being, and our state of being is a reflection of our sense of identity, which is what we want to frame everything in this evening. This is what is going to be important as to whether life is going to flourish or not. And so we really need to understand that true health is the full expression of life that is rooted in a clear awareness of self. That's going to be important because no longer should we be looking at health. And there's a reason why we want to broaden our understanding and perspective of it because of what's happening in the world today. We want to have a clear understanding that what we call health encompasses every dimension of our lives, and and the root of that is our state of being. Health is a state of being, and it is a complete state of being, and that is rooted in our sense of identity. And so, what drives our state of being, as we would be aware, is how we think, our emotions, our thoughts, our beliefs, our perceptions, how we interpret the world that we live in, and how we experience life based on how we understand the world to be. That state, all of that is what constitutes our health. But because we don't look at health in that holistic perspective, we have today a growing global epidemic of chronic lifestyle diseases. The World Health Organization calls it the global burden of disease. And on their website, they project over the next decade that the statistics are going to become worse. And so, most of us, as we get older, we develop one of these chronic lifestyle diseases, and they account for 74% of global deaths. There's nothing on the planet that takes more lives than chronic lifestyle disease. Not wars, not violence. When you combine all these other statistics together, none of them come close to chronic lifestyle disease. We don't think much of it, but people are that it takes 50 million people lives every year. And we have developed an approach to dealing with this um, that has not served us as effective as we would like it to be. This is important for us to really consider because most of us go down this road. And if we, regardless of what we are pursuing in life, what may be our priority, if it is that we are pursuing expanding our business or developing relationships or whatever may be our priorities, if we were diagnosed with a chronic condition or a potentially life threatening condition, all of a sudden, nothing will take more precedence than this illness that we were just diagnosed with. And so, when it comes to chronic lifestyle diseases, particularly if it is potentially life threatening, it overshadows everything else that we may have thought might be a priority in our lives. And so, it's very important that for us to really bring it into context and understanding that what we are experiencing in the world today, this growing epidemic, is because of the state of being. The disease is not the problem. The growing percentages are not the problem. It is because it's just an expression of the lifestyles that we live, which is shaped by our state of being, which is how we view ourselves. It's rooted in who we believe ourselves to be, how we believe ourselves to be, based on how we might have been enculturated. And so I'm broadening it and taking us a little bit deeper that when it comes to living a life that is free of disease, and if we have any of these chronic illnesses, the same process is going to bring us out of it. So we can overcome illness, we can live disease free, and the very same principles and process that takes us there is what enhances every other area of our life as well. And so, as we open this up and as we unpack this, I want to look at this quote that was made by Thomas Edison back in the 1800s, which is a very insightful statement to make that long ago. He said, "The doctor of the future will give no medicine, but will interest his patients in the care of the human frame, in diet, and in the cause and prevention of disease." I want to highlight where he says, the doctor of the future will give no medicine. Now, to even conceive that the fact that we could actually deal with illnesses today, that a doctor can do that without medicine seems inconceivable. But we are actually in that time, and we have been in that time for a long time. But as it comes to as it relates to the medical establishment, we're beginning to see even moves in that direction. So, for example, there's been a recent discovery in the conventional medical establishment for cancer treatments. They call it hyptotrypsy, which is where they're using sound waves or sound frequencies to destroy tumors as opposed to medicines. That's just one example. But where we want to focus is understanding the cause and the prevention of disease. because within the equation of understanding the cause and prevention is also what releases how we can live a disease-free life and even overcome illness without having the use of toxic medicines. Um, the medication that we use today and the general approach that we use in medicine today, if you were to go and look up these statistics, you'll see that prescription medication is actually listed as the fourth leading cause of death on the planet. And so while it may save our lives and while it may help us to manage and control chronic conditions, it is not the best thing for us. But here's what I want us to really open our minds and grab a hold of. Because of who we are, and because we are designed to live whole lives, when we engage from that perspective, it puts us in a position and puts us in a place where we can truly now engage what we possess as human beings. We are remarkable and magnificent beings. And if we can move away from the fragmented way we have been conditioned to live and live more whole and complete lives, we would unlock potentials that we only may dream is possible. But I want to awaken in your mind and in your heart that we are divine beings that have potential to live at a level of life that it surpasses conventional understanding of things. And hopefully we'll get a touch of that today. So how is it possible that we can recover and live a disease-free life if there is no medicine? It is possible because healing happens by design. And that's because of who we are. It's a natural part of the intrinsic programming of how the human being is made. Healing is a divine flow of light that's woven into the fabric of human design. Spontaneous healing occurs when that design comes into full alignment with divine order. Let me explain that a little bit. We know that if we cut our hands, it's going to start to heal. It's a very complex process that begins, but eventually it heals, it forms a scab, it drops off, and the skin is as good as new. If we cut our hair, it will grow back. If we break a bone, the doctor will set it, but it will start to mend, and it mends automatically. Nobody does that. There is a flow of life that runs through the very fabric of our being that heals and repairs everything that happens in our body. And I mean everything that happens in our body. At this very moment that we are sitting here, every second or every millisecond that passes, 70 trillion cells are performing intricate functions all automatically, and they're doing that and they're rebirthing themselves. Millions of cells are dying, millions of new cells are being rebirthed, and there's this constant flow of rebirthing that's taking place. And we're not involved. It's built in to the human design. Spontaneous healing, which is something if you're not familiar with, you can research that. It's all documented in the literature of epigenetics and psychoneuroimmunology, and quantum biology. All the data now is there where spontaneous healing is where people with especially life-threatening and terminal conditions completely recover without the use of any kind of conventional or other medical treatments. Listen to what I'm saying. You do your research. There is a book that you may want to consider. The book is called Cured. It's written by a medical doctor called Dr. Jeffrey Ridiger, Ridiger, I believe it's spelled. And he wrote a book called Cured. And after 20 years of researching spontaneous healing, or it's called spontaneous remissions, how people can recover from life-threatening and terminal conditions without medical interventions or any specialized treatments, that how was that even possible to happen? Now, and that happens because The whole healing apparatus, that divine flow of life that's woven into our fabric, is why it happens. But the people who experience it are people who came to a place because of their life threatening conditions, because now the end was facing them, they came to a point where they re examined their lives, where they begin to question what really matters and what they really value. And it took them into a place of introspection and reflection and changing the way that they interact, how they perceive life, and it took them into a journey that brought them more face to face with recognizing who they really are. In fact, in his book, he lists the four major pillars that brings on spontaneous healing, where people recover. And we're talking about people that have stage 4 cancer, people that have tumors in the brain that's inoperable, that just goes away. This is all medically documented, but medicine will never go here because this cannot be patented. This is built in to the human design. The thing is, if we have a condition now and it's not, and our body is not healing it, it's just that something is blocking that flow. And in his book, interestingly, he said that therefore he discovered after 20 years of doing research on hundreds of people who've gone through to see what are the common threads, some of them being his own patients, he said that there are four major pillars. And I'm not going to go through them, but the pillar that he said was the one that stood at the apex. It was at the foundation that everything was based on. And when I read that in his book, I connected with him right away because it was exactly the place I was in. He said the number one pillar that brings it about is they're recognizing their true identity. Wow, I've never heard that anywhere in medicine before. And so that's where we are today. And believe me, when you do your research, if you're not familiar with it, we have seen this potential within ourselves. The placebo effect is another way where it shows itself. And there's lots of documented evidence on the National Library of Medicine where loads of statistics and experiments and tests have been done to validate that the placebo effect is real. But people treat it like it's a negative. Oh, that's all in your mind. Absolutely, it's all in our minds. But it just reveals the potential and power that is resident inside of us, that we can recover from anything. The very essence of that very power that resides in us to recover and heal from anything is the same resident nature and power that causes us to live life at a level that is unbelievable. So, yes, do we need medicine? There are times when we must have it to take us through, because to live at this level of alignment and balance where that flow flows through us, that's a process. We have not learned how to live. But this is the process that we want to do, not just because we want to recover from illness, but because we want to live an extraordinary life. We want to be able to live a fulfilling life. We want life to be impactful and meaningful. We want life to be worth every day that we open our eyes and live and enjoy a fulfilling life. And that's what happens with the very same alignment that takes us there. And so, yes, is it possible that we can heal without medicine? It's happening all over the world today. But let us not wait for something drastic or a crisis to face us for us to now to begin to re-examine what really matters in life and begin to introspect and to see that how we've been chasing life, really, how much of it really is important and really matters. So to open that up a little bit further so that we can connect some of the dots, this is, many people around the world know of Dr. Emoto, but I'm highlighting this to bring home and so it will be crystallized more. He's written several books. I've read a couple of his books, The True Power of Water. And in his book, let me just read this, Dr. Emoto, he conducted a series of experiments exploring the effects of human consciousness on water. His most well-known experiments involved exposing water to various words, thoughts, and emotions, and then observing the resulting changes in the water's molecular structure. One of the most striking findings was that positive intentions, such as words of love and gratitude, had transformative effects on water crystals. Now, it's very significant for this. When he first presented his findings to the establishment, like new things that we don't understand, it was looked at skeptical. But then, as the research went on, now today it's all accepted. They understand that this is a fact. But again, when it comes to healthcare and medicine, nobody goes here. And in fact, what he was showing that when you take water and you expose it to certain sounds, words, thoughts, emotions, frequencies, the water, the molecular structure of the water actually responds to it and changed. And you can go online, you could read about his work, you could read about his experiments, and you could even look at some of the crystals, and I'll put some here for you. This is just this is the same water, not different type. He's taking the same water and he's exposing it to whether it's a heavy metal song or different music. And how he does it is that he will take a sample of it and what they call flash freezing. It would freeze very quickly, and water always freezes into crystals. And so what he discovered is that depending on the sound and the frequencies of the sound that the water is exposed to, it crystallizes differently. And this is just different sounds that he exposed it to. Now, when it comes to things like, and it's not just its sound, it is words. It is also, what was absolutely amazing is that he would take a glass of water and he would write the word love on it and put the glass of water on the paper with the word love and flash freeze, take a sample of it and freeze it and watch how it will crystallize. He will take the same glass of water and put it on a piece of paper that says, I hate you, and do the same experiment, and it freezes in a very ugly form. So how interesting is it that water, of which makes up most of the structure of our body, 70% of our body is water, and we have thoughts, words, emotions that we are emitting, which are all frequencies. We're doing that all day long, and we're not even aware that the water inside our bodies, the fluid that's creating the environment inside, is responding to these things. And so he has a book where he talks about the healing power of water and how we should, govern our thoughts, our minds and emotions, and so in order to bring about a healing response. I share this because part of the whole process of spontaneous healing is where people come into a place where in their whole re-examination and they bring themselves into a place where in looking at themselves differently and looking at life differently and responding to it and harnessing new thoughts and new perceptions and new beliefs, etc. This is all part of what brings us about. So this is important just to be able to show that. Now, to help us to bring it into our own lives with understanding the essence of state of being, and I'm going somewhere with all this for us to be able to bring it ahead where we can engage. We are three-dimensional beings, and we have two essential natures, a physical nature and a spiritual nature. As it pertains to our topic today, we're talking about illnesses forming in the body. Our physical nature is where we develop chronic lifestyle diseases. Our two natures, spiritual and physical, is bridged by what we call our soul. This is where our mind, which is the primary component that governs it, our mind, heart, will, this is where we have thoughts, beliefs, perceptions, we make choices, decisions. This soul is this is where we navigate life. This is where the experience of what we call life happens. It happens right here. And this is the bridge between the two. The way it's designed to function, and when I say spirit, I'm not talking about some mystical, abstract thing out there. I'm talking about a very real functional dynamic of who we are. It is in fact the true essence of our being. This is the real essence of who we are is here. We just may not know that because we have not been brought up in a world to help us to understand that. I'm not going to get into that, but we have life today and we can move today and we can think today because of our spiritual essence. If everything is in order and our divine identity, our creative power, our sense of awareness is what conditioned and calibrated the mind, our soul, then what flows into the body is homeostasis, balance, and order. There will be no disease. However, it has to flow freely from spirit all the way through. This is, if it flows freely, that's spontaneous healing. Not only is that, but when our sense of identity, which is seated right here, the sense of who we are, our sense of self awareness, our sense of identity is either going to be defined by our spiritual essence or it's going to be defined by our physical nature. One of the two of these defines our sense of identity. If it is not defined by our spiritual essence, it will be defined by our physical nature, which is how we've been grown up. But this is the key right here. Our sense of identity is what determines our state of being. Our state of being, which is our thoughts, emotions, beliefs, perceptions, etc., how we see and interact with the world, is what flows this way. The thing is, on focusing here, when thoughts, beliefs, emotions, and choices reflect a sense of identity that is contrary to our true essence of being, which is one of peace, joy, love, harmony, it's balance. When our sense of identity here is defined by thoughts, emotions that are contrary to, it creates a tension right here in the soul. That tension in the soul passes on to the body. You see, if we lack awareness of who we are, and when I say awareness, I'm talking about the existential awareness of who we are. Being no longer defines our life, doing is what defines our lifestyle. And that's driven by performance, appearance, achievements. And that's shaped by a false identity that we adopt from social conditioning, the environment that we grew up in. We adopt a sense of identity that is governed by the five senses that hardwire us into this external world. All the data that comes through that is what shapes our sense of identity. For every human being on the planet, just about, that is what is normal. And when we do that, we can know our lives are defined externally and not internally because it's all about doing. You want life to be better, you got to do more. You want to succeed, you got to do more. It's about appearance, it's about being seen, it's about being accepted, it's about being acknowledged, being appreciated, being recognized. It is all about our sense of worth and value comes externally. It's about where we live, the car we drive, how we dress, the friends we have, the accolades we. Our whole sense of identity is defined externally. And when that happens, and there's a feedback loop between here, when our sense of identity is defined externally, we have no sense of awareness here. We have no sense of, we just, somebody comes along who we respect and as an authority and say that you are a spiritual being, and we accept it to be so, but we have no conceptual understanding and experiential awareness of that. And there are times when it comes out, and so we know that there is something to it, but it's not what's defining our life. And as long as our mind and heart, our will, as long as our mind is defined by our external reality, we will have what I call spiritual amnesia. We just accept that it's a reality, but it's not what's conditioning and defining our way of living. But when the flow of life that comes from inside out is opposed and it comes from the outside in, this is what creates that inner conflict, that inner tension, because our sense of identity, and I'm just taking a very deep teaching and just giving a framework of it, when it goes the other way, when doing precedes being. You see, we have to be before we could do, but when doing precedes being, right here is the internal conflict. And this is how it happens. This is when it comes to disease. Think of it as this is the light of life and it flows all the way through. That's spontaneous healing. But when we create a tension here, it becomes like a veil that blocks the light and it casts a shadow. Disease is nothing more than a shadow that has been cast because right here, there's not a free flow. Spontaneous remission is when the veil has been moved and the light flows all the way through, and it happens. But where is it? Our sense of identity needs to be reformed into not just accepting intellectually that we are spiritual beings. And this has nothing to do with being religious or a part of any kind of belief system. This is inherently a functional part of who we are. Functional in the sense that our spiritual nature enables us to be able to tap into a dimension of reality that cannot be accessed through physical senses. It allows us to be able to function in a way that once we live by it, not only does we're going to live disease free, but everything in life aligns. The right people come into our experience, the right circumstances, the right opportunities. Life is a flow. Life is never a struggle. But when it's the other way around, we fight with life. Life is always a struggle. We're trying to make life work. From the inside out, life only works for us and never against us. And I'm telling you that also from experience. Live from the outside in, you're always going to be trying to figure life out and trying to make life work. And what happens is that we end up being part of this global growing epidemic of chronic lifestyle disease. So once it flows the opposite way and we have that inner resistance, that's what we call stress. When living is externally driven by that egocentric identity, which we pretty much all have to whatever degree, that tension that inevitably arises in the soul is the syndrome we know to be stress. That inner tension, where we live from the inside, and it's defined by patterns of thinking, emotional responses to life that are not harmonious and positive. They're disharmonious, and it's a conflict between our two natures. That is this, why is that important? Because stress is the primary cause of what falls apart. Ladies and gentlemen, listen to what I'm going to say to you. Not just our thought patterns, but more so our emotional responses to life. We are not taught how to deal with that properly, and we have a lot of emotional traumas that are stored in our not just subconscious minds, but are stored in our bodies. The sciences of psychoneuroimmunology validates how this works. And that once that happens, and it's happening right here, that is the beginning of a spiral that will become chronic lifestyle disease. What we want to do is focus right here in the center. Our minds, which is central to it. The mind conditions the heart when you flow from the outside in. If you flow from the inside out, the heart conditions the mind. But that's a process of a lifestyle change, which we're not even going to get there. But my highlight is what we call stress, that the authority says is the number one driver of chronic lifestyle disease, happens because of this inversion. Life's supposed to flow one way. We have been conditioned, and it starts actually within the womb and within the first 6 years of life. We've been conditioned to perceive life in a way that inverts this. Along the way, we learn that there's another way, but nobody teaches us how to understand it sufficiently to bring it back from the inside out. And so this number one driver of chronic disease, all the authorities, the World Health Organization and psychological associations around the world, 60 to 80% of people in modern societies live in a chronic and recurring state of stress. And believe me, this has become our mind, our brains rewires to this, that this becomes our norm, meaning that we don't even know that we are living in a state of stress except when it becomes excessive. Up to 90% of doctor visits are stress related. Stress is the basic cause of 75 to 90% of all human illnesses and disease. Over 90% of disease is caused by stress, thoughts, and beliefs. That's the father of epigenetics. Chronic stress increases the odds of developing Alzheimer's by 145%. Alzheimer's is a disease that's something that was not around when I was a boy growing up. Today, it's overtaking cancer, which is the number 2 cause of death. Alzheimer's is now beginning to overtake it. Mental decline, cognitive declines are coming, and it's all because of this number 1 driver of chronic disease we call stress. This is because we all live fractured, but we don't see it as an issue. But it is the seedbed from which stress arises. But we think of stress in a way that we don't really recognize. We think that stress is external, but stress is not. It's internal. It is happening on the inside because we experience life on the inside. And this is what it can look like, and all of us can identify. It is that the fracture that looks like this. It's privately experiencing life one way, but publicly pretending it's another. That's fractured living. It's projecting a positive self-image, yet concerned what others think about you. It's portraying a sense of confidence, yet wanting others to affirm your value. It's desiring inner peace and contentment, yet easily triggered by others. It's saying that we value truth, yet not be honest with ourselves or others. It's recognizing the value of health, yet willfully choosing unhealthy habits. It's claiming to love ourselves, yet betray our values of self-worth. It's thinking and feeling one way, but saying and doing another. It is all when our inner well-being is defined by outer circumstances. We have been conditioned and taught to live this way. The result is a growing pandemic or epidemic of disease, which the World Health Organization says is going to keep getting worse. Why is that when we live in a time of advancing technologies, of greater know-how, of greater understanding of the human body, we have more doctor to patient ratios, greater today, but yet it's going to get worse. Something is wrong. See, stress does not arise from the external circumstances of life, but from how we interpret and react to them, shaped by the internal framework of our mindsets, which is rooted in an unstable sense of self. Who you believe yourself to be forms the lens through which you're going to view life, others, and every circumstance. So when life is viewed through the lens of wholeness, which is our true essence of being, thoughts, emotions, words, and actions, they will align as one. There's no fragment, there's no distinction between them. That's where we start to live authentically. And what naturally arises is peace, joy, and a sense of freedom. That's the end of stress. That's spontaneous healing. That's how we can live disease-free. This is how. But to understand how does this translate into the chronic disease, it happens through the central nervous system, which is how we experience life. The brain and all the network, the whole network of nerves that run through every part of our body, that is called the central nervous system. And it's the bridge between the mind and the body. It's the hardware that bridges that. And the central nervous system extends into what is called the autonomic nervous system, which is what controls all of our bodily functions. And it has 2 branches. This is just simplifying a very complex mechanism. The autonomic nervous system is what's running everything in our bodies right now. It's how we are breathing, how all our cells are doing what they're doing. The first branch of it is called the sympathetic nervous system, and it deals with the stress response. You can remember this because they both begin with S. The sympathetic nervous system becomes dominant and activated, what they call the fight, flight, freeze response, and it happens when there is chronic stress. And it leads, based on all the medical literature today, chronic stress leads to all chronic lifestyle diseases. It is the seedbed for oxidation and inflammation, which is what all chronic disease growing, including DNA damage and premature aging. Now, having your sympathetic nervous system activated is not the issue, because it is part of our design that helps us to deal with emergencies, to help us to deal with when there's a crisis. This kicks in so that we can be able to activate those responses to deal in situations like that. The problem is that this is continuously running. It is always in overdrive. And based on neuroscience research, the average person lives with the sympathetic nervous system in overdrive. According to statistics, 75% of people live with the sympathetic nervous system always in overdrive, and many times even while we're sleeping. While we're sitting down, relaxing, maybe watching a movie, it's still in overdrive, and it's not because our brain has become wired to it. This is important for us to understand, but this is in our control. The second arm of it is the parasympathetic nervous system. And you can remember this one because it begins with P, and this is the opposite of stress, which is peace. This is the one that deals with healing and recovery. This branch of the autonomic nervous system becomes dominant and becomes activated when there is coherence or harmony between the mind and the body. And this happens when there is more harmonious states of mind and states of being. This is when our thought patterns, our emotional responses is all harmonious and positive. And so the central nervous system is regulated by brainwave activity, which is a reflection of our state of mind. Our state of mind is measured in neuroscience using EEG and MEG equipment that reads the brainwave activities of our mind, and that is what regulates the central nervous system. So it's very simple. When our inner state is one of harmony and defined by positive frequencies, love, peace, joy, gratitude, compassion, when that is what defines our inner state, the brainwave activity shifts the autonomic nervous system into parasympathetic dominance. This is the difference between living from the inside, living from the outside. We have two systems that are associated. But when our inner state is defined by negative frequencies, because every thought and emotion is a frequency, when it's fear and worry and anxiety and guilt and shame and suppressed traumas, the brainwave activity shifts the autonomic system into sympathetic dominance. So you understand how our state of being, which defines our state of mind, which is reflected in brainwave activity, which determines which branch of the autonomic nervous system is going to be dominant. And that's where the problem is. Now, we experience both, but for the average person, the sympathetic system is what's dominant and running all the time. The parasympathetic nervous system, we experience that our life is punctuated with that along the way. But what we want is the parasympathetic system to become dominant. And we can know that by our state of being, our thoughts, our emotions, how we respond to life. Our emotions are the GPS. Our emotions are the gauge as to which system is dominant. So when life is a frustration, and when we are anxious, and when we're angry, and when we hold resentment, and when life is when negativity dominates our thought patterns and our emotional responses, we are constantly running on the sympathetic system. You will not be able to avoid illnesses even if you're eating well, you live in the gym, and you're taking all the best vitamins, which is a good thing to do. You may prolong it, but you won't avoid it. Whereas the opposite is true. If our parasympathetic system is dominant, and even though we may not be able to do all the other things perfectly, we would be able to still live in a state of good physical wellness. And so, how do we unlock this innate potential, this flow of life that unlocks it? Pure thoughts, pleasant emotions, positive words, because the fluids in our body is responding to it. And even more than that, every cell in our body dance to the rhythm of thoughts and emotions. And of course, consistent. If we can do this, well, of course, this is a tall order. Very much I understand that. Who can do that? But if we can accomplish that, and it really is the most important thing that we could do in life, is discover who we truly are. That's the most important thing we can do. And this is the journey back to that. But this dissolves that inner conflict. And it harmonizes brainwave activity, which then restores that mind-body harmony. And when that happens, the parasympathetic system becomes dominant. and whatever condition we have will gradually start to go away. But I want us to understand that there's the direct link between parasympathetic dominance and what we have running through our minds. But if we can synchronize brainwave activity to be harmonious, then it resets the central nervous system and that restores everything. That's the solution. But we know that this is difficult. So here's the question. What if there was a way that our brainwave activity can resemble a state of mind and state of being that is in harmony and balance? What if we can do that? What if we can do it without any medicine, any ingredients, any drugs of any type, any external frequencies, any equipment, any pills, any portions? What if, without spending a lot of time in meditation and breath work and metacognitive exercises and in training our minds and our thoughts, which, by the way, I would certainly suggest that those are good habits to engage. But what if, in our very busy, stress-filled lives, what if there's a way that we can bring our brainwave activity into harmony and balance to resemble a state of being and a state of mind that is actually harmonious? Well, what would happen is that the very thing will happen. It will bring parasympathetic dominance. It will bring mind and body into balance. And the very flow of life that naturally flows will just flow. And what would happen is that the body will begin to function better, the mind will begin to function better, and we can start to see significant improvements in our health and well-being. That is the discovery that I want to tell you that was made. There was a gentleman who made a discovery several years ago, a decade ago. He made a discovery of how you can bring your brain waves into harmony and balance, with the result of your body optimizing its function, which it will naturally do if we can bring that balance. It becomes even more amplified if we consciously decide to add that to it. But he discovered this not because he was looking to create something to help people with illness. He was just trying to help his mother, who has multiple sclerosis, a neurodegenerative problem. And because there's no medical solution as to why the brain is not signaling the muscles, he set out on a journey that took years of dealing with the best of minds. And then he came up as a software engineer. His name is Jay Dhaliwal. And because of what he discovered to help his mother, he brought it to the world. And he developed a company to bring it to the world because there's nothing in the world that does this. And this is now ushering in a brand new era of wellness that has never existed before. And I absolutely love it. Why? Because it's tapping in to the matrix and the technology, the divine technology that's already there. I call it my divine technology. And all it is a simple patch that you stick on your skin. It has no ingredients, no frequencies, no substances, nothing on it except a pattern. And you'll see how that works. But because of that, he was able to make this statement that he's building something generational that will transform the world. What I love about what he's doing and why I've joined his cause is because his mission is based on purpose, not on profit. He built something that to help the people all over the world, a drug-free solution that will, but here's how it works. It works on a completely different concept that never existed before, which is there is a natural system that's built into the human design that heals itself. But we live and think and move in such ways that it hinders it. He found a way to just remove the hindrances so it can flow freely by bringing harmony and balance back to the language of the brain, which is brainwave activity. Here's a video, just 2 minutes, of how he does a demonstration using EEG just to show how it works. And then I'll just explain how that happens, and then we'll just bring it to a close.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jay Dhaliwal. I'm the CEO and founder of Vox Life and the creator of Vox Life HPT. Today, I want to talk to you about our Harmony Neuro Patch. And what this product does is actually stimulates receptors on our skin, sending a neurosignal to our brain to help it reach homeostasis. This is the only product in the world that relies on the neurohaptic system that every single one of us has to optimize our neurology and optimize our health. Today, with the help of Dr. Mark DeBrincat, our VP of Clinical Strategy, we're going to be using an FDA-cleared 19-channel EEG headset, as well as FDA-cleared software to visualize, record, and show the impact that our technology has on our neurology and our brains to help it reach optimal performance. What we want to show today is how the Harmony Neuro Patch helps that dysregulated yellow, blue, and red colors in the brain maps transform into that healthy green homeostasis neurology that is the foundation of health and wellness. So what we're looking at right now is a neurological QEEG output of Mike's limbic system. The 19 channels are reading over 60,000 brainwaves a second and generating an output of neurofunction and brainwaves. What we want to see now is where that suboptimal red and yellow colors are. We want to see them turning as much as possible to a healthy green with the application of our HPT patch. So we've applied the patch now to Mike's arm, and within 10 seconds, you're seeing that predominant yellow and red become predominantly green. Just for clarification, ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing in the world that has this output at this rate of speed without drugs, without chemicals, without electricity. That's the power of Vox HPT. So when we see a healthy green neurology, what we're looking at is a brain and a mind in homeostasis. It is operating in its optimal function. And this is so important. And this is why it's so important. So Vox Life HPT, as we demonstrated with our neuro patch, helps the central nervous system reach homeostasis in our neurology. And the reason this is so important for overall wellness and health is that neurology is the top of the pyramid of our physiological health and wellness paradigm. First is neurology at the very top, then there's chemistry, then there's biology, then there's physics and mechanics. Neurology will have an impact all the way through our entire physiology. Healthy neurology, healthy body, better wellness.
So the technology is based on Nobel Prize research that goes all the way back to 1939. So it's not based on new discoveries. It's just that he's taken what has been discovered and he's put the dots together. We know that in neuroscience that our brain waves is a reflection of our state of mind. And the demonstration that he just did, those of whom might be familiar with neuroscience know that yellow and red is always indicative of incoherent and chaotic brainwave activity, denoting restless states of thinking, which is the way the average person is. When he applied the patch and it came green, that is more coherence, more balance, more orderly functioning of the brain. Now that is a tremendous thing to achieve because there's nothing in the world that actually does that. You can see brain scans that will do that of someone who might have been living in a monastery and meditating for the last 40 years that have that type of control. Now, how does that actually work? How does it happen without any type of chemicals or drugs or anything on the patch? It just uses just a pattern that's engraved on the patch. But just to reiterate that the link between our brain waves and our sense of identity. Every thought, emotion, and belief carries a frequency that influences brainwave activity, creating either harmonious or chaotic frequencies depending on one's state of mind. This state of mind arises from one's state of being, which in turn emanates from one's sense of identity. I just wanted to reiterate that because in the end, we want to go beyond the mindset that we have been given to how we think about health as just to do with our bodies, that when it comes to a simple technology that is profoundly powerful like this, that we could tend to lean on and say, because it's effective, I don't need to make any changes to how I think, how I live, and that would not be the best way that you may want to go about it. The Nobel Prize research goes back into the 1930s and the scientists who got the Nobel Prize in 1944 for that basically showed that every cell in the human body receives and emits electromagnetic frequencies. So every cell, we are electromagnetic beings as receiving and transmitting frequencies. That's been known for many years, and that has led to MRIs, MRAs. It has led to EEGs. It has led to the technology that we have in medicine today. Started with discoveries like that. In more recent times, two other Nobel Prize laureates received the Nobel Prize for discovering that in the neurons, in the sensory neurons in the skin, they're what they call piezoelectric channels or ionic channels that senses the vibration of anything that touches the skin, and it sends a signal to the brain. Well, anything that touches our skin will send a signal to the brain, which is how we even know that anything is touching our skin. So to understand how the simplicity of how it works is almost like how a QR code would work. A QR code has a matrix of a pattern on it. And this pattern could be arranged in any way. If you point a camera at the QR code, it will convert the visual pattern of data into a digital signal, and it would unlock the information that that pattern represents. In a very similar way, SuperPatch just only carries what they call a tactile pattern on it. The science is called haptic perception, which is the sense of touch, how the sense of touch activates neural responses in the brain. So there's these specialized ionic receptors in the skin that detect the vibration of the pattern on the patch, and it transmits a neurological signal to the brain that synchronizes brainwave activity in various networks. Each pattern corresponds to a different neural network in the brain. And a very easy way to understand it is that when we understand that everything that we do, how we breathe, how we walk, how we brush our teeth, how we eat, how we think, how we respond to stress, everything has a neural network that has been formed in the brain. Now, every physical and mental function, we understand, have this neural network that controls it. When the brain waves of that network are out of harmony and dysfunction, the patch just sends a signal to return that network back into balance. So, for example, let's say the areas of the brain that govern immune function. If those areas, those neural networks go out of balance, if the brain waves are not properly synchronized, we will not have the strongest immune system. What we must be aware of, which a lot of people may not be aware of, is that before any organ or system in the body becomes dysfunctional, the network in the brain responsible for it must first become dysfunctional or out of balance. So what the patches do is that the pattern on the patch is read by the ionic channels, sends a signal to the brain, and brings that network back into harmony so it now optimizes physical function. You got to really wrap your minds around that. And it's just like how tuning forks will work. If you had two F-pitch forks and you hit one, the other one will just automatically start to vibrate. It's like that. There's a particular frequency or harmony of all the different networks in the brain that keeps them optimal. When they go out of balance, what makes them go out of balance? The way we think, the way we respond, all the negative frequencies that's being injected. The patches, what Super Patch has been able to discover after 15 years of research and development in neuroscience is that various patterns will send corresponding signals to various networks, returning them back to harmony. The result is optimal physiological or psychological function. So the technology, vibrotactile technology, has now become peer-reviewed and published research, and is now published in some major medical journals around the world. The company is being invited to present its groundbreaking technology now at major global symposiums around the world. And that's because nothing has ever been seen before that does not introduce anything at all to the human body. It's just a pattern that your skin reads, almost like a QR code. that sends a signal that restores balance and harmony, synchronizes our brainwave activity to bring everything, to bring that particular area back into balance. So it unlocks the potential that already resides within through the power of touch. And it's clinically proven with double blind studies. So when we can bring the mind and body into harmony through brainwave synchronization, the brain becomes more orderly, biological systems become more coordinated. There is that mind body homeostasis that is restored, and it optimizes the body's function. That's tapping into the intelligence all that already resides in our body. That's tapping into the matrix of our divine design. That's why I call it my divine technology. When I put it on, it removes the static, the hindrance that's stopping the brain from being properly tuned. It just retunes it, brings it back into harmony so that the music of our spiritual potential can flow. The music of our spiritual potential is always flowing. We now just bring the tune back. This is amazing technology. And so far, Superpatch has been able to discover in the years of research and development 14 different patterns, 14 different modalities, 14 different technologies that interfaces with brainwave activity to bring harmony and balance that optimizes health, wellness, and performance in how our mind and our body works. For mobility, for pain, for performance, for stress, immune function, to help us sleep, mental clarity, for energy, for mood, for focus, for healthy skin, for metabolism, for habit control. And when you combine them together, you can get the type of effects that, so when you harness various networks simultaneously, you're going to get an efficacy in terms of function that is unlike anything can do, including natural medicines. They are the type of mind-body solutions that the world is looking for. Because what I love about them is that they don't only optimize physiological function and psychological function, um, it helps us to be able to do it without any contraindications. So they're completely safe. It doesn't matter if you're on any kind of medication, if you have medical implants in, there's no contraindications to it. It's safe for children. You have a child that is a toddler that has the flu, you can put on the defend patch, which is for the immune system, and you'll see the type of effects, how quickly they work. They work almost immediately because it's direct brain-body connection. And the wonderful thing about it is that they're all accessibly priced for people to afford it. 100% drug-free. They're FDA registered. They're clinically proven. And I have not come across in my 25 years of clinical practice anything that is as safe, as clean, and as potent as these patches are. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through. This is what the research on them. You can always go online to be able to see the various patches and how they help when you bring the brain body balance into balance, how it helps to promote. One of these last three that I just mentioned. This one is one of my favorite, which is the peace patch, which brings if you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed and you can't cope and you put on this patch, in a matter of moments, you start to feel centered, you start to feel calm. It brings back that emotional resilience. And so these patches are absolutely amazing. If you're dealing with pain, this is what the research has shown. Athletic performance, absolutely. This technology has such far-reaching implications for our physiology and our mental function that is beyond what any medicine can produce. It is literally transformative. You're dealing with, you want better sleep, you're having issues with that, the REM patch, absolutely wonderful. You have a job or you want to increase your level of focus, concentration, and attention, you're looking at the focus patch. Issues with moods, issues with depression, you're feeling low, the joy lifts you out of that. Struggling with addictions, habits that you want to get over, including thought patterns. When we are addicted to negative thinking, addicted to overthinking, it helps us to break a lot of these habits. Help to support burning more calories while at rest. Will help us to be able to deal with managing our weight in a healthy way, um, better complexion, healthier skin. Um, for the men who tend to have, we get older, our masculine function tend to decline. This will take us back up. And it is tremendous when you begin, it's really life changing when you begin to combine them and you harness different activities together. Here is the wonderful thing about the super patch. And for me, this is where the magic is. From using them continuously over time and making them a part of your lifestyle, there are some patches that you may just use for a time until you overcome whatever, and there are some of them that you will always maintain, like the one that keeps your brain in order, the one that keeps your immune system strong, and the one that keeps your central nervous system always in balance. That helps to protect your body and keep them in order. When you use these consistently over time, the brain, through what they call neuroplasticity, begins to rewire and reorganize itself to this new balance. And as that happens over time. But as that happens more and more, it begins to literally transform your life, not just physically, but your whole sense of well being. Your state of mind begins to change. Your disposition starts shifting because you have a more orderly, functioning mind. What does that mean? It means that we can now turn that flow back around and a lot easier, and it's more accessible to be able to make that life transforming change. And so, very simple to use. They've been tested. They're safe for your skin. All that work has been done already. You can get all this information on the website. The Super Patch Scientific Advisory Board involved in the research and development, real world application, brilliant people who have published papers within the medical industry. Um, and so my invitation to you is to get aligned. Get aligned by looking at yourself, looking back at taking time to examine and understand that you are an incredible being, that we have potential beyond what we have been tapping into. And it shows up in our body as illness. It shows up in our body as lack of energy and systems not running optimally. To be able to turn the flow back in the right direction, we need to govern over our physical well being. That's one of the starting points. Super Patch is an excellent way to do it. I've never come across anything like it. And so, my invitation to you is that you start to look at your life and begin your journey, and Super Patch becomes a bridge. It's a wearable self care solution that is tailored by your body's own intelligence, and it has proven results. Visit our Facebook Patch and Go site. Literally thousands of testimonies from people all over the world that are doing it. How you can access it, they're not available on online platforms. They're not available in any stores. They only come through from Super Patch, the company, and its affiliates, of which I am one. And I invite people to join the movement of that. Why? Because this is something that the world needs. Not but starting with yourself. Start with yourself because you're going to see you need to experience how this can help you to reorder your life. And then if you so desire, you can go beyond that. And so I invite you to engage in healthy lifestyles with the potential financial empowerment. I invite people to join the global business community. And how do you do that is very simple because you want to be able to access the technology at the best price. They retail for $60 for a 4-week supply. Each pack has a 4-week supply in it, and they're all one price. It's $60 for that. That's at retail. They sell for $45 at wholesale. For you to become a lifetime member where you can buy them at wholesale, it costs less than the wholesale price. And so I suggest to people, what is there? You have only a lot to gain. Become a lifetime member and start to access the technology. Start to use it. Start rebuilding, regain, and realigning your life. When you begin to get the experience, if you so desire, you have the option to participate in the globally scalable economic model. That may not be for everybody, but for those who may be interested in looking at that, because everybody, this is tapping into an industry, a new era of wellness that has never existed, and everybody needs it. What I've seen this happening with people and with my own self um, is is why I'm becoming more and more increasingly passionate about people using this. So whether you may be interested in improving your financial position or not, you have the option for that. But to access wholesale pricing where you can make it a consistent part of your lifestyle to help to retrain your brain, it is worth it. That $40 is what it costs to become a lifetime member. That's worth it. I would suggest that you can reach out to me. You could reach out to if one of our partners are here, or if you came on from online. But you can reach out to us, and we will help you to be able to get yourself aligned. But consider it, because this is absolutely life changing. And so I'm going to stop sharing here and say thank you to everyone for taking the time for coming on and being here. And oh, let me just say this now. There has been the company had a promotion going this month, which ends tomorrow, and to become that lifetime membership is just $1, and that ends tomorrow. So, what would you have to lose to become a lifetime member for $1? And be able to access the technology at wholesale pricing, start using it, see how it works for you. And then if you are happy with what you see and your experience of it, then you have the option to join the community in terms of the economic model. And that too is so unique in and of itself. So for those who might want to explore that further, tomorrow evening, the same time, 6:30, it's a shorter presentation, but we're going to talk about how that works, how that's accessible, what's the potential of that, whatnot. So for those who may be interested, you can join that call. Just request the link, and that will be made available to you. So with that, I want to say thank you so much for coming on, for giving us the opportunity to share this technology with you and to share the principles of how we can live a more optimal state of being by recognizing who we truly are, our true essence on the inside. And Super Patch is a bridge to taking us back to that. So with that, I'm going to say thank you very much. Good night to everybody. Have a wonderful week, and perhaps we'll see some of you new people on tomorrow night. Okay, good night, everyone.